audio-only version today. So Texas State is apparently getting set to at least be offered a spot in the Pac-12. We have talked about this on the show before, where Texas State holds all the cards. If they decide to stand pat in the Sun Belt, the Pac-12 goes back to the drawing board. If they take the offer from the Pac-12, the Sun Belt needs to replace them. If the Sun Belt replaces them, it's probably going to come from another conference. That conference, likely Conference USA, is going to have to figure out what they are going to do. So there are a lot of moving pieces here, but it certainly appears as if Texas State sees a Pac-12 invitation as imminent. And I think, one, Texas State deserves a lot of credit for the way they have handled this, because they have been upfront and honest with the Sun Belt. There were no backroom deals. There were no real shady activities, anything like that. They basically were upfront and said, hey, you guys should start looking for a replacement because I'm getting ready to put my 2 weeks notice in. And I think in today's world of college sports, that deserves some praise. Like, it shouldn't be like asking people to operate with transparency and integrity shouldn't be something that you should have to reinforce, but here we are. So Texas State deserves a lot of credit. So what happens then? What's the next domino to fall for the rest of the college football landscape should Texas State decide to accept the Pac-12 invite, which they almost assuredly will? Well, there are some conflicting reports on that. There are some people who will tell you that it's a done deal. Louisiana Tech going to leave Conference USA, go to the Sun Belt, which seems like a natural fit geographically, institution-wise, etc. Makes all the sense in the world. And there are others who will tell you that there is a push from those inside the Sun Belt to say that Louisiana Tech adds nothing to the Sun Belt. That Sun Belt already has a foothold in Louisiana. Why do we need to increase that further by adding a Louisiana-centric school? Now, it would make sense geographically because the Sun Belt is still the only conference that has divisions. There's a Sun Belt East and a Sun Belt West, and a Sun Belt West school is leaving. So it would make sense to replace them with a Sun Belt West school. You don't have to redo divisions. You don't have to worry about potentially losing rivalries or how you're going to handle rivalries because you have to adjust the divisions. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. If you just add Louisiana Tech would be a natural rival with the Louisiana schools inside the conference already. Makes a lot of sense. But if the argument is they don't add anything to the conference, they don't make our conference more money, they don't increase our conference footprint, they don't bring new potential students to us, they are already there. And that's a fair and somewhat valid argument. But I would like to think that we are maybe at some point going back to a world where geographic regions matter more than they have over the course of the last 2 decades or so, where it's like, hey, you know, it still is an important aspect to be regionally aligned with some schools. I think that's a good thing that made college football really great and really interesting for a really long time. I'm not going to pretend like I can't get on board with the idea that Oregon and Rutgers are in the same conference, or Cal and Wake Forest are in the same conference. I understand how and why we got here. But I do think regionality, especially in the group of 5 level, is a cool and good thing. And I think that should be celebrated. Now, I can't say whether or not Louisiana Tech should or shouldn't be the next member of the Sun Belt. That's not up for me to decide. I don't have the ability to decide what they should/should not do. I don't make those determinations, and it's not for me to decide. But should that happen, that would sort of coincide with an issue that has also popped up in college football this week, and that is that Sacramento State wants to be an FBS school. And the NCAA says, No, you can't be an FCS school because they don't have a conference invite. Well, should Louisiana Tech leave Conference USA for the Sun Belt because Texas State left the Sun Belt for Pac-12, that would certainly open up an FBS conference invitation, wouldn't it? And does Sacramento State fit the bill of a Conference USA school? I think the answer is a somewhat resounding yes when you think about all things considered. Because Conference USA has sort of been the conference landing home for schools transitioning from FCS to FBS. Missouri State and Delaware are going to be in the FCS to FBS transition this year. Western Kentucky. You get Liberty, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. If you go through the list of the last dozen or so schools, and that doesn't include the likes of, UTSA, Charlotte. If you were to go through the last dozen or 24 schools who have joined the FBS, an overwhelming majority of them have had stops in Conference USA in their time. So, does that drastically open up Conference USA's footprint by adding Sacramento State? Yeah, it does, because the current closest school would be New Mexico State, which is essentially really West Texas. So adding a school like Sacramento State would be a bit of a okay, especially when the other full members of the conference are in Florida and Georgia and Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, Virginia, etc. But if Sacramento State needs a conference invite to join the FBS, which they have shown, hey, we are wholly interested in being FBS members, and Conference USA needs a member, it's kind of a match made in heaven. Now, I don't know whether that is if Sacramento State and Conference USA could agree to, hey, this is a football-only deal. I don't know. But it would certainly make a lot of sense for a lot of different parties. So that's what I kind of expect to happen. I expect Texas State to take the Pac-12 invitation, and I think they probably should. I think that the Sun Belt should invite Louisiana Tech, and I would imagine that Conference USA will offer a football-only invite to Sacramento State. Want to know your thoughts. How do you think this all plays out? Where are the dominoes going to fall next? Do you think Texas State should or shouldn't take the Pac-12 invite? Do you think that the Sun Belt should or shouldn't add Louisiana Tech? If not, who should they add? Should they add anyone? And should Conference USA offer an invite to Sacramento State? Want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. Listen on the podcast feed. Drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.